Hello. Welcome back to Underrated Movies. I'm your guy, I'm your man, Mr. Alton Henry, and today I'm going to talk to you of another film. The Abyss, starring Ed Harris, Mary Elizabeth Mastranto, and Michael Biehn. And there was another actor in here. Well, it's a story. It's a science fiction drama adventure film. It's a story about, I think they're ocean dwellers or oil riggers operating the special machine that dives deep down into the abyss of the ocean. And they're accompanied by, or they have to assist a military group who have a secret mission in the sea. And they are left with little information when they find out that there could be potentially an alien life form underwater. They try to cover it up. And there's this race against time kind of like scenario where, the militaries become kind of like the antagonists. Michael Biehn, most particularly, who I think this is one of his best performances. This dude in here, I remember watching this film, and I remember his performance in there was probably one of the most different from what I've seen. I haven't watched a lot of his movies, but compared to Terminator playing Kyle Reese, this guy, he leads the military squad to assist with Ed Harris. Ed Harris owns the ocean machine that they're on. It's been a while since I watched this film, so I'm doing this by memory. And then he kind of trying to keep his detail about his mission under wraps. He's trying to avoid confrontation from Ed Harris as he can, even with Mary Elizabeth, who also is kind of butting heads with him, and then also with Ed Harris. There's a story about those two there. You see the paranoia that this guy puts on his on himself. Like you see him like kind of like fearful of his situation. There's a moment in here where, which I've never really seen before, and on just with character, mostly an antagonist, where you sense fear coming from the guy. And I thought that was a very interesting take to show that from a antagonist, where you're seeing or you're witnessing a character, a bad guy, fearing of the situation that he is in. And it debates whether or not he's kind of like the bad guy or not as the film kind of goes along, but eventually he becomes the bad guy of the film. Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth, they play a ex-couple who divorced. Mary Elizabeth, she's already kind of moved on, but she has to use her husband's ocean dwelling team to find some sort of signal or reading that's underwater, and unfortunately she doesn't like that, but he's the best that he is at it. So there's this kind of love-hate relationship that kind of goes along in the film. There's a scene when there were, and I'm referring to the special edition. There's a scene in here where after an argument with his ex-wife, Ed Harris comes into the restroom, into the bathroom. He pulls off his wedding ring and dumps it into the toilet and walks out of there. Then after a second, he comes back in, fishes it out, puts it back on, and he's like, "Man, I can't let this woman go." He was like, "Wow." And they're doing all this under a very severe storm, and the storm could cause a high level seas to flood the cities. And so supposedly the movie's been out since 1986. So if you haven't seen it, well, I'm going to spoil a little bit here. to kind of get you to really watch this movie because I think it's pretty good. Now, it's one of those slow build sci-fi movies where what the film is actually about, it doesn't really kind of, that aspect of the plot doesn't really settle in until like the third act of the film, where you're dealing with all these other scenarios where the movie is very slow paced. It's a slow build, which I like, to kind of get you to absorb the story, to absorb the visuals, to absorb the characters. And um, I actually like how I actually like the characters in this. I think this is probably one of James Cameron's well written characters for his film. Every character is kind of likable except for the antagonist. There are actually some people who worked with the antagonist that helps out the protagonist once they kind of figured out that there's an alien life form that's under the sea. Now, do these effects, do anything that they've done in this film holds up? Heck yeah, they've done most of everything practical effects where they actually had scenarios where the actors actually almost drowned. So yeah, they did some very realistic and dangerous stunts in here. And to me, not the fact that the actors risked their lives for this movie, but the fact that they actually did everything practical to make this movie believable, sold me the feeling of feeling claustrophobic, feeling like it make me feel something about this film, of the stuff that they're going through. There's a suit that Ed Harris has to wear to deep dive. It's supposedly some sort of device where it's where it makes you breathe breathable air, but you have to consume this weird liquid into your helmet, into your lungs, which makes you last longer into the abyss. So it's like you're inhaling water, liquid, into your system until you're able to breathe through it. And man, that's actually one of the most cringe-worthy scenes I've seen, and that doesn't deal with any violence at all. It's just like, it really gets you to really think like, dang, what if I had to go through something like that? And that was actually legit. It actually felt like a real life concept of ocean diving. Like, what if they actually do this? I'm actually kind of frightened. Like, what if I actually have to go through something like this? It was actually very inventive. It was very inventive. And for a science fiction film, it was also interesting that they didn't do a lot of futurists. I mean, the movie's set during present, but I mean, present time of that year when this movie was made. But then it has certain sci-fi elements where it doesn't heavily rely on sci-fi, but it's more of an adventure. And actually, that's like old classic kind of like cinema that we don't really normally see now these days, where it tries to do everything. It tries to build up a story, tries to build up character. It doesn't feel rushed. It feels like a grand event. You don't normally get those now these days. The last one I got was Internals. Unfortunately, I didn't see that in theaters, but I loved it. Man, this is one of those rarely epic movies that don't really get made now these days, man. I mean, it's actually kind of sad. And I heard this film didn't really do well back in its heyday, but it's gained a cult following over time, and I think is regarded as a classic and James Cameron's one of his most underrated movies. And I remember the first time I watched it. I think the first time I watched it was the extended cut. Honestly, I prefer the extended version to any film that they have an extended version to fill in more character. And honestly, I think this is better than a lot of his movies, except for Terminator, True Lies. This is better than Avatar. This is probably my fourth favorite James Cameron film. Uh, Even better than Titanic. Like I have to give it to The Abyss. Like it made you feel something walking out of here. And this is a very good adventure film. Like you really should check this out. Something I think has been missing from movies for a long time. The Abyss. Have you seen it? Comment below. Let me know if you have, what you thought about it, and if you do see it, I would recommend watching the special edition. It's close to 3 hours long. You know, it's. I haven't seen the original version of it. I think it's like 2 hours and 17 minutes long, but I would recommend the extended cut just because it fills in a little bit more story and more characters. And let me know what is your favorite underrated movie.